Hello, I'm introspectve, and I uh, wrote a personal narrative essay as part of a course that I'm taking as an exchange student, and I will read it. It is titled Game Start. Who am I? It can be said that most people never do something remarkable with their lives, and I was just like that. I casually strolled through life until university, where I entered the world of art, coding, and entrepreneurship. Seeing all those creations, whether they were illustrations, startups, or cool coding projects, I was mesmerized and felt a hint of jealousy. I said, why not me? And now here I am, moving towards the dream of one day standing among the awesome people behind those projects. The reason I was introduced to video games at the age of 2. With my dad being a huge gamer, gaming quickly became my first passion. Every friend I made, I would introduce them to gaming. We would gather to make impressions of the heroes and characters from those games and create our own fun. But I learned that nothing lasts forever. As people started to grow up, games faded out from their lives. For most of my friends, they had connected my identity to games so much that as games faded out from their lives, so did I. Recovery. All throughout primary school and middle school, while people were working on themselves or hanging out with friends, I would be progressing my in-game levels. That's why high school was a fresh start for me. As the difference between ordinary people and me were slowly becoming noticeable, I realized that my self-centered attitude, especially coupled with my limited interests, was making me lonely. To fix that, I got into sports like table tennis and basketball and became curious about what others were doing, which in turn helped me make more friends. I was a total natural when it came to getting good grades, so since I didn't need to study, I would be hanging out with my friends all the time. I even asked a girl out, although it didn't go as well as I would have liked it to. After all those years of having faded away from other people's lives, my own was it's what it's my own was at its peak again. Jealous. As my confidence rose, so did my expectations about myself. I was looking at my friends and saying, why is she or he better at this than I am? Not knowing that one person can't be the best at everything, I became super competitive. I mocked those who lost to me, and I would become toxic when I was the one that lost. I wanted everyone to see me on a pedestal and chant my name because I was the greatest at everything. To the little me in his little world, I really was the best. Each time cracks showed, whether it was a friend finding a girlfriend or achieving something important with their lives, I stagnated, which made me bitter day by day. By the time the semester break came for my second year of high school, I was on bad terms with pretty much everyone I knew. The pit. I noticed that during the semester break of my second year that things were not going well. Throughout my break, I made plans to mend the broken relationships and hopefully create better ones. These plans were effective but very short-lived as COVID-19 came around just at the start of the second semester. This was a new and strange period for all of us, but I wasn't in a good mental state going into it, which led me to struggle to adapt to the new way of life. Quickly, my gaming hobby became an addiction. This time, the consequences were severe. I quickly found myself alone and with failing grades, but there is no reason for me to go back. I would care more about my next match in the game than I would about eating or sleeping. There was nothing to look forward to besides reaching the next rank. When my parents asked me what I wanted to do as a job, or if I had any interests, I would say, worst case, I'll become a professional gamer since this is all I got. This period of my life lasted for around a year, and I would describe it as my lowest low. The miracle. Still failing to adjust in my third year of high school, it wasn't just me who knew that I was descending into a darker place. My parents saw how deteriorating games were becoming for me, so I was pretty much banned from doing anything related to gaming in my last year of high school. Unfortunately, this backfired terribly. Even though I knew I was wrong, I would look for ways to outsmart my parents and play games whenever I could. This led me to barely get any sleep during the day and not understand anything at school or cram school during the day, during the night. I remember my most played game at the time was called Lost Ark, which is like a massively multiplayer experience that is meant to be played with friends. I didn't have any, so I would speak to people I didn't know, arguing and fighting over unnecessary in-game problems just to find groups to play with. Also, I was competing at a high level where a single mistake would cause you to be verbally harassed and immediately kicked out of the group. That toxic environment left such a big negative impression on me that I quit competitive online gaming forever. And honestly, I'm glad that I did. Somehow, the disgust for how worthless I had become fueled me to grind out exam practice with my remaining 3 months of high school, and I get into the top 1.5% in my country, which led me to enter computer engineering in Bashir University with a 50% tuition. Transition. Volatile, dangerous, unpredictable, and especially hateful were the words I would describe myself as I got out of high school. I was volatile because I didn't have an identity anymore. Games, which were once the reason for my whole existence, had now become something I dreaded. I hated myself for letting inconsequential pieces of media consume my life. For all the relationships that I had lost, all the opportunities that I missed. But more than anything, I hated myself for spending all this time and having nothing to show for it. When people would say I was wasting my time, I couldn't ignore them anymore because I thought the same. This time, I didn't have the confidence to face reality, so I hid it all inside until I could rebuild myself from the ground up. All I knew was that I wasn't going to let it ruin my university years. A new beginning. I entered computer engineering purely because I wanted to make money and didn't know any better option. Well, actually I did, but becoming a doctor would not be as cool, in quotes, since both of my parents were doctors. I must admit the little me wasn't that horrible at choosing a major despite choosing based on how cool each profession was, considering that he was dealing with a lot more than I can fully articulate in this essay. I joined some school clubs that were so inconsequential that I don't even remember them, and tried my best to not fail any class. To me, I was now the most average person that existed, but I was fine with that as I was searching for my identity. Even to this day, my identity is still not yet complete, and in difficult times, I find myself copying some of the behaviors of my peers. What I didn't know was that I would eventually have to learn programming. If I wanted to make money. When scrolling on my phone, I would see people saying, chase your dreams, find your passion, or asking me what my dream job was. As the blank slate that I was, I looked back on my entirety of my life. I looked back on the entirety of my life and found that all I ever loved were video games. Except now, I didn't know what to feel about them. Game development. Computer engineering is this huge branch of many different disciplines coming together. At the time, AI wasn't a big thing. Hardware just didn't interest me. Cloud computing looked boring, and cybersecurity was way too complicated from the outside. I could have looked into some other disciplines, but game development interested me more than the others. My logic was that as someone who once loved video games, making their own games would be something like a dream come true. I tried to apply for the game development committee of my school, which at the time didn't have a student club, so I reached out to someone related to it using LinkedIn. That someone happened to be one of the founders of the community and the big name among the small Turkish game development space. He didn't like my tone, and I didn't take that well. I thought that with a space as small as Turkey's game development space at the time, being on bad terms with one of the big names in that community was a death sentence. Just like that, my interest in game development took a hit. I decided to look elsewhere while continuing my studies because, unlike game game design majors, I was free to be anything. Digital art. Still in my first year and wanting to work on video games, I started exploring other roles in the video game industry. I quickly learned that you would ideally use your own tablet with its pen or a special drawing tablet connected to your computer for digital art. Intrigued by my sudden interest in art, my father humored me and got me a drawing tablet as a New Year's gift. Though, just like with coding, I ran into many issues. The most noticeable being having never drawn seriously before. I thought that making a career out of art was unrealistic, but I wasn't going to let that stop me. When I told my parents about this goal, my father said, "I'm sure you'll do great. That does sound like a nice hobby." Coming from a line of down to earth professions, our family had no connections to art whatsoever. Nobody even played any musical instruments seriously, so it was no surprise to me that they weren't taking my interest in becoming a professional artist seriously. Even though I knew where they were coming from, I was finding my new hobby actually fun. When I wasn't doing the basic practice drills, I felt like this could help me alleviate the feeling of only having a single interest. Trying to prove myself and navigating a new discipline with no guidance coupled with not getting early results resulted in my motivation to dwindle with each drawing. As a last ditch attempt, I signed up to a drawing guide website called Drawbox. It is still up and quite a valuable tool, but it's not for everyone. I realized that it was not fun for me. It was not for me as all the pressure got even more intense and I burned myself out of digital art for quite a long time. Rebuilding my relationship with games. While I was pursuing fields related to game development, I was trying to find ways of incorporating games into my daily life by playing in moderation. Still traumatized by the experience I had with Ozark, I would mostly play single player games. In this period of change, I realized what games meant to me. The games I used to play in the past were all designed to replicate the competitiveness of life, and instead of progressing at life, you would progress in those games instead. Since they were much simpler compared to real life, the gains, losses, and your improvement could be viewed from a single screen, which made them more tangible. And to me, results meant everything. Interestingly enough, my addiction was no more. Single player games didn't follow the same practices as multiplayer games. Crucially, they had an end, unlike competitive online games where the grind is endless. To me, games were no longer a second life. They were simply entertainment. YouTube. By the time year 2 of my university came around, I was still stumbling through life. After having explored some interesting paths in my first year, I decided that I wanted to be a famous and rich, but without having to do difficult things like programming or art. So I decided to give YouTube a shot, and since then, even though I never became rich and famous, I have created 3 channels that signify incredibly crucial moments of my life. Starting with my first channel, Daily Zenless Zero News. It was about the game Zenless Zero. I'd follow the media surrounding the upcoming game and make videos about it, steadily building my audience to over 250 subscribers. I really thought that it would go somewhere. Then it happened. The launch of the game was a disaster. Forget making videos, just playing it was a struggle for me, and I had to give up the channel for the sake of my mental health. This channel was monumental in my journey because this was an extremely strong emotional bond I had built with a game in such a long time, and as the doll crashed down, I realized that all this pain was worth it. I could have been using this emotional energy to build something with my life. I never got attached to a game ever again. My writing. As I was working on my first YouTube channel in the second year of university, I decided to write fantasy stories, 95% of which are now lost because I have poor organizing skills. This period of my life was quite lonely, but in a different way. I could really give myself to these stories and didn't mind keeping them to myself. Once again, not having any guidance and being naturally introverted from never really talking to people, I struggled to make anything move forward after writing my first drafts. I'd write 80,000 words just to keep it in a Word file somewhere on my desktop. Thinking back, if I had found an editor, a proofreader, and publisher, I could have absolutely become a writer. It was just that searching and learning was all I ever did, and I couldn't muster up the courage to reach out to anybody, especially after my traumatic experience with one of the game development community's big shots. I learned that I took rejection very harshly, and this fear blocked me from being able to make moves that could have changed my life. This process taught me an important lesson. I was useless. I was just struggling to identify my strengths and communicate them effectively to others. To that, I had to learn about myself. To do that, I had to learn more about myself. More than just being an introvert, I had to overcome those complicated mental barriers that were holding me back. And for the first time, I decided to give self-improvement a shot. Self-improvement. In the second year of university, both my writing and my failed YouTube journey taught me valuable lessons. The third university year would be it. I didn't get the name 2024, my preparation year. To be precise, the journey started in September 2023 with the creation of my second YouTube channel, introspectve. This was a channel where I stared at the camera, talked about what was bothering me and how I could fix it to hopefully become a better person. Its original idea was to help others find their path in life through my own experiences, but it turned out to be a way for me to start my own healing process. At this point, I was almost 20, so I thought that I needed an identity and couldn't keep up living off of copying other people because I just couldn't sit with the thoughts of just being someone else's shadow. Throughout my journey, maybe reaching out could have saved me at so many points of my life, but whether it was not being able to communicate the complexity of my situation to my parents or friends that I didn't really want to bother with my inner mess of a mind, I never could talk to people. In this aspect, this YouTube channel was my savior. I pretty much shared all that I was afraid of sharing because I would be sharing things that I thought people didn't want to hear or simply didn't care about. The beauty of YouTube for me at the time was that it was an empty hole, which meant that no one I knew would be bothered by my rambling. Only those that were interested or cared for came, and even though they were strangers, I was surprised that I was not alone in what I felt and was going through. This was exactly the kind of help I needed, as my consciousness was now clear. Conscious was now clear. I could think about the future without the burden of my past unresolved trauma, and it set me free. I shared my plans and left the channel because it had done exactly what it needed to do for me. But for all those that I abandoned, I'm truly sorry that I wasn't able to be there and help you more. Entrepreneurship. My third year at university was just about to begin. I needed to bounce back. My plans had to be improved. I needed to dream big because now I was free. The little therapy session had brought out a new kind of beast within me. The one that is not alright with things being good or fine. I had to take it to the top and change the whole world. This flame of ambition still hasn't died out, and even now, I'm fighting to make a big impact on the world. According to this logic, the next step for me was creating a company to achieve that dream of bringing change and impacting the world. So I took an entrepreneurship personality development course. In this course, I realized that the person I couldn't even be considered in the same realm as the person I wanted to be. Not just as an entrepreneur, but also as a person. There was much to do, but I was now making moves towards what I wanted to be. US exchange program. Along with the entrepreneurship class, I also took my capstone project in hopes of finishing university early, and I would have if it wasn't for the US exchange program. Taking the capstone was what allowed me to come to the US in the first place, so I'm grateful to my past self for not being afraid of taking risks and responsibility. In the spring term of my third year, I randomly stumbled upon this poster at school that said, "Study in Washington, D.C." Normally, I would just keep walking, but America represented something special to me that the old me wasn't aware of. To reach that point that I wished to be, I couldn't be that same old me anymore. I had to be braver, smarter, and willing. So I took the leap, and in the first term of my fourth year, I am currently here in America. I feel like this is just the end of the beginning of my journey. While I'm here, I'm also studying for the GRE exam to do my master's in the US and solving lead code problems to hopefully one day get into those big tech giants such as Google, Amazon, and Apple, and etc. I'm also consistently practicing digital art, and I must say that bringing my drawing tablets was an extremely smart move, as I was able to practice nearly every day and have become as good as I can in a single month. All the doors are open, all the doors are open just like before, but this time I'm not watching from the sidelines. So what now? I'm still in my exchange program and in my fourth year at university. I have learned the importance of communication and I will reach out whenever I need to. I understand people more and can build stable relationships. I'm working incredibly hard to become the best version of myself. I believe that as long as I'm moving towards my dream with all I have, I will first bring the change to myself, then spread it all throughout the world. Lastly, I did mention burning out a couple of times. Well, and the reason I won't let it stop me is through each failure, I was able to get up and aim higher, and with each fall, I learned something and improved myself. I now have a purpose, things that I want to see happen, and really strong reasons behind every single step I take. So no matter what life decides to throw at me, let it come. I am stronger than I ever was before. And that's it. A bit of a different video, but I hope you enjoyed. See you in the next one. Bye.